The sun had barely risen when Aunt Mornike arrived unannounced. She was Mama Folashade's older sister, one who rarely visited, but whose voice always carried weight like a storm about to break. She stepped into their modest sitting room like a shadow from the past, her wrapper rustling softly as she looked around the house with a gaze heavy with unspoken judgment. After the usual greetings and awkward silence over a bowl of pap, her tone shifted. She didn't waste time. "I've heard everything," she said, gently but firmly. "The whole neighborhood is talking, and not kindly." Mama Folashade lowered her eyes. Her husband sat silently, his jaw clenched, his hand resting on his walking stick. "It's not fair," Aunt Mornike continued, her voice trembling now. "What has this girl done, really? Did she ask for this cross? Shame is not hers to carry, but people don't care. They never do." Folashade sat in the far corner, quiet as ever, staring into her lap. She was not unfamiliar with conversations that pretended she wasn't in the room. "I'm not saying you should marry her off, God forbid," Aunt Mornike added, looking from Mama to Baba. "But let her go to Ilorine, to our cousin's house. Let her breathe. Let her be where mouths don't spit her name like dirt, where her back is not stabbed by people who once called her friend." The words sat heavy in the air. She can help out there, stay a while, maybe even start over. Nobody will know her story. Nobody will care that she hasn't bled. Mama Folashade's tears came first, soft, reluctant. "But she's my only child." Baba didn't speak for a long time. He stood up and walked slowly to the window, watching the outside world that never gave his daughter a chance. Then he nodded. A week later, the house was quiet as Folashade folded her clothes into a small bag. Not too much, just enough to leave. Her mother moved around her slowly, eyes brimming with tears, and she refused to let fall. She slipped a well-worn Bible into the side pocket. "Read it when it gets too loud inside you," she whispered. Folashade gave a weak nod, her lips parting slightly as if to say something, but she couldn't. Words had never done justice to her pain. That morning the sky was cloudy and soft with mist. The air smelled like a new beginning, though Folashade didn't know what it meant. She stood at the train station, dressed in a simple gown and scarf. Her small bag sat beside her. A family nearby was laughing loudly, their voices stabbing her thoughts like glass. She sat down quietly on a wooden bench under the station shed. Her hands were clasped together tightly in her lap. The ticket poked out of her Bible. Her eyes occasionally scanned the tracks, but she wasn't really looking. She wasn't sure if she was escaping or searching. Maybe both. The train hadn't arrived yet, and for now she just waited. The palace was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that brought comfort. It was the suffocating stillness that blankets a place when joy has long taken its final breath. Michael sat upright in his bed, eyes wide open, the silk sheets tangled around his legs. His royal pajamas clung to his skin, damp from hours of tossing and turning. The ornate chandelier above him swayed gently, casting fractured shadows across the room. Yet, despite the opulence, all he could feel was emptiness. His chest ached, not from illness, but from a heaviness that had taken permanent residence in his soul. He rose from the bed and walked barefoot to the massive window that overlooked the palace courtyard. There, bathed in moonlight, stood the very walls that had once made him feel invincible. The marble pillars, the golden railings, the lavish garden with its perfectly trimmed hedges. All of it now seemed hollow, meaningless. He whispered into the night, "What is the use of a crown if it weighs your spirit down?" Memories flooded him, of his parents boasting about his achievements, of the hospital he built with his hands and dreams, of the secret wedding with Omalala. A woman who now mocked his name even in his presence. A woman who turned every hallway into a battlefield, every room into a scandal. Michael's hands trembled. He clenched them into fists. "This is not life," he muttered. "This is not peace." He looked around his room, at the designer shoes he never wore, the tailored clothes that had become his armor, the framed certificates on the wall that once defined him. None of it filled the void in his chest. I have everything, but I have nothing. For the first time in his life, Michael realized that happiness had never knocked on these palace doors. It wasn't found in the luxury. It wasn't buried in the accolades. It wasn't married into royalty. It lived elsewhere, maybe in the quiet laughter of a stranger, maybe in a humble home with leaking roofs, or maybe in the arms of someone who saw his soul before his status. He opened his wardrobe slowly, choosing not the finest fabrics, but something plain and comfortable, something that made him feel invisible. From under his bed, he pulled out a small duffel bag and packed only what he needed: a worn Bible, change of clothes, his stethoscope, perhaps a silent reminder of the man he once hoped to become. He didn't take his phone. He didn't write a note. By 4:17 a.m. Michael was gone. No convoys, no royal escort, no security, just one man with a heavy heart and a bag slung over his shoulder. He hailed a taxi, an old rattling one, and gave vague instructions. "Take me to the train station." "Anywhere far?" The driver glanced back. "Where exactly, sir?" Michael's voice cracked as he answered. "Somewhere no one knows my name." As the taxi moved through the dark, sleeping city, Michael stared out the window. Billboards bearing his family name flickered past. Stores he donated to, clinics he helped build, faces he once smiled at. It was as though the past was waving goodbye. When they arrived at the station, the air was cool. The scent of diesel and uncertainty mingled. He stepped out, tipped the driver, and walked away without looking back. The day had broken. 4 hours he sat at the terminal. No ticket, no direction. Just a man running from the weight of his crown, hoping that somewhere along the tracks of fate, peace was waiting. The bench at the edge of the platform was cold, but Folashade didn't seem to notice. She sat still, arms folded tightly around her stomach. Her eyes locked on the horizon where dawn had begun to stretch its golden fingers across the sky. The soft mechanical hum of the approaching train echoed faintly in the distance, but her mind was far away. Loreen, a city she'd never been to. A city that wasn't part of her dreams, just her escape. Her aunt's words still echoed in her head. Just go. Let people talk about someone else for once. She had nodded then, not because she agreed, but because she had no energy left to argue. There was nothing left for her here. Not dignity, not hope, not even faith. Her fingers trembled slightly on her lap, not from the cold, but from a quiet kind of fear. The kind that wraps itself around your throat and squeezes slowly. She lowered her head, eyes shut tight. And like it always happened when her soul was unsettled, the dream returned. That boy, always the same dream. A small boy staring at her with longing eyes, calling out to her, "Cheryl, Cheryl, don't go." Only now. The boy had become a man. Same face, same intensity, only older now. Deeper voice, taller. A mystery that haunted her nights more faithfully than sleep ever did. Why Cheryl? That wasn't her name. Then why do I always call him Twinkle? And why did his voice sound so familiar? The loud screech of the train's arrival broke her trance. The station buzzed to life. People rose. Luggage wheels rolled. Voices layered over the station announcement. Train to Ilorine now boarding at platform 3. Folashade stood up abruptly. The handle of her small bag tore instantly. Everything tumbled out. Toiletries, folded scarf, book, photo, her underwear. She gasped, scrambling quickly, but in the same second, her balance gave out. Her feet slipped sideways and she went crashing down to the tiled floor. People moved around her, some paused, most stared. Then a hand reached down. Strong, steady, warm. She looked up into his eyes. The man crouching beside her had eyes like dark velvet, familiar yet distant. His expression froze the moment their hands touched. Sharp jolt, like electricity. Both of them flinched, visibly. Their palms stuck for a split second. as though time refused to let go of that contact. "Cheryl," the man whispered. His voice cracked and filled with confusion. Folashade's breath hitched. That voice. That exact voice from her dreams. She wanted to speak. She wanted to scream, twinkle, but nothing came out. Her body was frozen. Her soul was spinning. He stood, bewildered, staring at her as though she had emerged from a hidden part of himself. She snatched her bag roughly, gathered what she could, and bolted toward the train door. Her legs were trembling. Her heart was pounding. Michael stood there, dazed. His body felt wrong. There was something almost primal, stirring inside him. He had an erection. It embarrassed him, shamed him even, but the sensation was there. He looked down at the ground, still in shock. And then he saw it. Small ID card, folded slightly at the edge. The kind tucked carelessly into wallets. He bent slowly, picked it up. His eyes scanned the name. Folashade A. Oladimeji. His chest rose. His jaw clenched. Inside the train, Folashade found a seat by the window, shaking. She exhaled, then looked down. Same. Her trousers were wet, darkened near the thighs. Blood. Sharp, bright, fresh blood. And for the first time in her life, tears ran freely down her face. Is this real or dream? Everything seems like a dream. Michael stood frozen long after the train had disappeared down the tracks, its sound swallowed by distance and diesel fumes. In his hand was a small, slightly bent ID card. Folashade Oladimeji. It read in soft gold lettering. Her photograph stared up at him, beautiful and solemn, like a ghost come to life. He couldn't move, couldn't think, only feel. His heart was pounding erratically, not just from the encounter, but from something deeper, that strange electric sensation that had shot through him the moment their hands touched. Current, spark, a connection he couldn't explain. He had never felt that with anyone, ever. His phone trembled in his hand as he dialed the only person who might understand. Uncle Kenny. Michael's voice was low, cracked with something close to awe. I saw her. The girl. The one from the dreams. Uncle Kenny's voice came through warm but alert. Cheryl. She dropped her ID card. Her real name is Folashade, Michael replied, his voice shaking. But Uncle, it was her. It was exactly her. I touched her hand and something happened to me. Can't explain it. Feel different. I'm still hard. My body. It's like it recognized her before my mind did. There was silence. Then a long exhale. I told you, didn't I? Uncle Kenny finally said, voice thick with the weight of something prophetic. You were never dreaming randomly. You were remembering. Or perhaps being reminded. Michael collapsed onto the metal bench just outside the station's waiting area. He buried his face in his hands, then looked again at the card, rubbing his thumb over the edge like it could somehow pull her back. She got on the train, he whispered. I don't know where she went. Where was the train headed? Uncle Kenny asked. Michael blinked. I'll find out. He ran to the information desk. His voice trembled as he spoke to the attendant. Please, the last train that just left. Where was it going? The woman checked her monitor and answered plainly. That was the 6:15 p.m. to Ilorin. Michael's breath caught. Ilorin. Of all places. He knew no one there. Had never been. It wasn't even a place he had ever thought about. Yet now, it felt like the center of his entire existence. Uncle, he said into the phone again. Ilorin. She went to Ilorin. Then go, Uncle Kenny said firmly, without hesitation. She is your missing piece. You will never be a whole man until you find her. Michael clenched his jaw. His heart beat faster. But I don't even know where in Ilorin. What will I do? Roam the streets shouting her name? I don't even know where she stays. You have her name. You have your spirit. The rest will come. Across town, as dusk melted into night, Folashade finally arrived in Ilorin. The train pulled into the dimly lit station with a shudder, and she stepped out into the thick warmth of the city air. Her legs trembled beneath her, not just from the long journey, but from everything her body and soul had just endured. Her aunt, Mama Dupe, was waiting, arms wide, voice joyful. "My Pekin, my beautiful girl," she cried, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "Thank God you arrived safely. You must be so tired." "I am," Folashade whispered, her eyes heavy. Mama Dupe looked her over with a mother's eye, brushing her cheek. "Come, rest for 3 days. No stress. Then you'll join me at the agency. You'll help me with housing clients. It's not hard work, but it's good. I'll put you on monthly pay." Folashade's lips parted. Hope rose in her chest for the first time in months. Maybe this really is the new beginning, she thought. Maybe. But in her heart, the echo of the moment on the train platform lingered. His voice, the electricity, the way he called her that name. Daryl. Michael arrived in Ilorin the following afternoon, the city basking in its quiet heat, unfamiliar streets stretching before him like chapters in a book he had never read. As the train pulled into the station, he stood still for a moment, hoping, no, praying that she would appear again, maybe standing by a pillar or exiting another coach. But there was no sign of her. Just strangers, bags, and the fading scent of old train steel. With nothing but a card bearing her name and face. He left the station, flagged down a cab, and checked into a modest hotel on a calm street just off the main road. The receptionist smiled and welcomed him like any other guest. She didn't know he wasn't really there for sleep. He wasn't there to rest. He was chasing a shadow that had haunted his dreams and now had ignited his soul. Once in the room, he dropped his bag and fell onto the edge of the bed, gripping Folashade's ID card in his hand like a lifeline. He whispered her name again. Cheryl. Barely audible, as if saying it too loudly might cause the moment to vanish. Then came the spiral. He opened his phone and started combing through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere. He searched her name, scanned through endless profiles. Every Folashade he found. He zoomed into their faces, hoping for the eyes, the cheekbones, the soul he'd seen briefly before she disappeared. Nothing. He downloaded a face recognition app, tried uploading her ID photo. Still nothing. The desperation clawed at his chest. He could feel it now, like a quiet storm swelling beneath his skin. He called Uncle Kenny. "She's here," he said, voice hoarse. "She's in Ilorin. But I don't know where. Did you try looking for her online?" Uncle Kenny asked, calm but concerned. "I've tried everything. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, even the weird people finder sites. It's like she doesn't exist anywhere but that train platform." There was a pause. "Then we'll create a path where none exists," Uncle Kenny said. "Hire help. Do whatever you need. But Michael, listen to me. You will never be whole without her." So he did. He sent her ID to 3 different private investigators in town. He paid fast, desperate money. Gave them what little he had. "Just find her," he told each one. "Please." But the hours turned to evening, and by the next morning, nothing came back. No leads, no updates, and in that quiet, Michael started to break. He sat by the hotel window, watching a street he didn't recognize. His heart didn't pound like it did before. His eyes stayed open longer than they should. And every time he blinked, he thought he saw her. Once, he even ran out of the hotel because he thought he heard someone call, "Cheryl." But it was only a woman shouting at the receptionist of the hotel. The hallucinations were setting in. He clutched the ID card like it was oxygen. "Oh, Cheryl," he whispered again, forehead resting against the cold window pane. "Where are you?" For weeks, Michael walked the streets of Ilorin like a man searching for his own soul. Every day, he would rise early with renewed hope, visiting shopping malls, combing every food court, scanning faces at every park, sitting for hours at university gates and libraries, hoping the wind would whisper her name or fate would cross their paths again. "Cheryl," he would murmur under his breath as he watched women walk past, sometimes following a familiar silhouette only to find it wasn't her. The dreams had stopped since the day he touched her, since that strange jolt shook through his body and awakened something too deep for a reason. But her absence screamed louder now than any dream ever had. Each night he returned to his hotel room with tired feet and a heavier heart, collapsing on the bed beside her ID card as if it were the last piece of her he could hold on to. He spoke to the card sometimes, telling it about his day, about the faces he saw, asking it questions it could never answer. "Why did you run, Cheryl? Why didn't you wait?" The hotel staff began to notice how thin he was becoming, how his clothes seemed looser, his eyes darker. Even the receptionist, who smiled at every guest, now gave him pitiful glances and asked, "Still searching, sir?" Michael nodded. Every time. One night, as he stared at the moon through the dusty hotel window, he admitted to himself that he couldn't keep living in limbo. He had been in Ilorin for almost a month. The hotel bed had grown too familiar, the hallway too cold. The city was oddly peaceful, too peaceful for a man carrying a storm inside. "I need something permanent," he whispered. "Maybe if I stay, she'll return." A friend from Lagos, noticing his long silence and odd responses, sent him a number, an apartment agency based in Ilorin. "Bro, you can't live in that hotel forever. At least find a place. Stay rooted if you believe she's coming." Michael dialed the number. The voice on the other end was polite, warm and professional. "Good afternoon, sir. This is Jarbina Castle Homes and Properties. You were referred to us. Yes, we do have a few available units. Are you free to inspect one tomorrow morning?" Michael's voice cracked. "Yes, please. Text me the address." Few minutes later, the message came in. 9 a.m. "One of our housing agents will be there waiting to show you around." The morning sun cast long shadows as Michael stepped out of the taxi, clutching the folded address from Jarbina Castle Homes and Properties. He had barely slept the night before. Heart pounding, eyes tired, spirit stretched thin. Still, he carried one thing with him: hope. The neighborhood was quiet, a cluster of modest but elegant houses tucked along a newly paved street. He looked around, unsure which building it was, then dialed the number he had saved. A soft female voice answered and apologized. "Good morning, sir. The officers are running a little late. Please bear with us. They'll be with you shortly." Michael sighed and nodded to no one in particular. "No problem, I'll wait." He stepped to the side of the gate, resting his back against the wall, and stared at the ID card in his hand once again. Then, a soft hum of an approaching car broke his trance. A beige sedan pulled up and came to a gentle stop right in front of the house. The door opened, and from the driver's side emerged a chubby, warm-looking woman in her 50s, dressed in a bright orange wrapper with matching headscarf. She carried the confidence of someone who'd built her own business from the ground up. She smiled broadly and approached Michael. "Good morning, sir. You must be the one interested in the apartment. Sorry for the delay. I'm Mrs. Jaola." Michael was about to respond when the back door of the car clicked open, and time stopped. Out stepped a young woman, radiant and glowing, the sunlight catching her cheeks like morning dew. She turned toward them, and the universe shifted. It was her. Folashade. Michael's breath caught in his throat. "Cheryl," he whispered, barely audible. Folashade blinked, her heart dropping to her stomach. "Twinkle," she gasped, her voice trembling. Both stood frozen for a second that felt like 1,000 lifetimes. The same magnetic current that bound them before surged again. Folashade's eyes welled with confusion and panic. She instinctively turned away, stepping back. But this time Michael moved faster. He caught her hand. The moment their skin touched again, that electric jolt surged through both of them. Stronger, deeper. Michael let out a low gasp, and Folashade staggered as if something had physically left her body. His grip was gentle but firm, and she didn't pull away. Her body trembled. She looked up at him with wild, questioning eyes. Michael, already breathless, stood still. His trousers tightened again without warning, his body betraying the sacredness of the moment with a flush of raw human vulnerability. Folashade clutched her chest. "What is happening to us?" she whispered. "Why do I feel like I know you from another life?" Mama Dupe, witnessing the whole scene, slowly approached. "Folashade, you said you didn't know anyone named Michael," she said cautiously. "Do you know him?" Folashade's voice cracked. "No, Auntie, I don't. But I can't explain it. My heart knows him. My dreams, he's been there." Michael turned to the older woman, desperate. "Ma, please. I've been here in Ilorine for weeks, searching for her. I didn't know where to look. I don't have family here. I came only with her name and the memory of that day at the train station. I've checked every mall, every corner. I even hired people to search. Please, please don't let her run again. I've suffered enough. I need to know who she is to me." Mama Dupe looked at both of them, eyes narrowing in concern but also wonder. She sighed deeply, the kind of sigh that only mothers and guardians understand, the one born out of equal parts worry and compassion. "Both of you need to calm down," she said gently, placing a hand on Folashade's shoulder. "Sit down. Breathe. Something is going on here that none of us understands yet. But I believe it's not ordinary." Mama Dupe held their hands firmly and said, "You too, sit down. This is not ordinary. Whatever you are going through, it is deep, maybe even spiritual. But to understand it, we need calmness, not confusion." She guided them gently into the balcony of the mansion, where a soft breeze whispered through the still morning air. They sat on the long bench, side by side, their eyes swollen from emotions they couldn't name. Tears welled up again as they looked at each other, telling the story of their lives, stories of pains and tears. After some time went silent, sobbing silently. Michael broke the silence. His voice cracked. "Cheryl, does this mean you are supposed to be my wife?" Folashade sniffed and shook her head slowly. "I don't know, Michael. I still don't even believe you're real. I keep thinking, one day I'll blink and you'll be gone. Just like in the dreams. Just like before." She turned to him, her eyes watery but honest. "Since I became a woman, I've never heard or seen a story like ours. Never. This is too much for my heart to accept all at once. So I can't say yes to marriage, not yet." She placed her hand gently over his. "But I promise I'll stay close. I'll be around you. And I want you around me. So we can heal. So we can finally feel normal. So we can live again." Michael nodded, his gaze steady despite the tears. "Then I'll wait. I'll wait until the day you believe this is not a dream. That I'm not a ghost. That we were always meant to find each other again. In this life." The two of them sat there in silence. And the mystery of life is often described not as a problem to be solved, but as a reality to be experienced and a process to embrace. Life itself is a mystery. Thanks for watching to the end. Kindly subscribe, like and comment.